the Walnut Creek City Council. This meeting is by teleconference only. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Francois.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Councilmember Waddell.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Here.
And Mayor Haskew.
Here.
All council members are in attendance.
Thank you. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Brown Act as currently in effect under the State Emergency Services Act, the Governor's Emergency Declaration related to COVID-19, and the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20 issued on March 17th, 2020. That allows attendance by members of the City Council, city staff, and the public to participate and conduct the meeting by teleconference. Teleconference locations are not open to the public. I'm assuming if you're here, you know the ID, but let me tell you what it is. A meeting ID is 917-2092-8825, and the password is 266713. When I open the public comment period on the consideration items, please use the raise hand feature or *9 if you're connected by audio only, at which time that will alert the staff that you have a public comment you would like to share. Please wait your turn, and once brought into the meeting, state your name and the city of residence for the record. You will have 2 minutes to make your remarks. Under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will be taken during the council consideration of the items, except for any comments related to the closed session item, which will be received during this agenda item. So are there any comments related to the closed session portion of the meeting?
We have received no written comments, and there doesn't appear to be any speakers.
Thank you. And now we will proceed on to the consideration item. Next on the agenda is the consideration of the REBOUND program and reopening strategies. So I am going to request a staff presentation. Please let me know who is going to do it.
I'm going to kick things off here, Mayor, if I could.
Perfect.
All right.
City Manager Dan Buckshire. Let me introduce you. City Manager Dan Buckshire is leading the discussion.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and welcome everybody who is tuning in today. Hopefully we have a large audience for this important meeting that we have this afternoon to talk about how Walnut Creek is going to rebound from the virus epidemic that we've been dealing with. A little bit of background, I think, as we're all aware, obviously in early to mid-March, our world began to change as we became more aware of the virus, and obviously protective measures were put in place in order to help and protect public health. From a health perspective, the actions that have been taken have been tremendously successful. The number of cases in the Bay Area are relatively low. The number of deaths are fairly low. The curve has been flattened as the capacity for our healthcare system. We are well within the capacity of our healthcare system. And the testing availability has increased dramatically. From just 2 weeks ago, in the entire Contra Costa County, there were 200 tests per day available, and it's up to 1,000 now. So we're well on our way towards being at 2,200 a day. So as a result of that success, what we are seeing now is that the health orders are beginning to be lightened, both incrementally and methodically. I'm not sure why I had a difficult time with that one, but incrementally and methodically. And as such, we are starting to see society open up a bit again. We're still a far cry from where we want to be and where we ultimately will be, but we are seeing some initial steps. Obviously, just this week, 2 days ago, there was the allowance for non-essential business to allow for curbside pickup, which is new over the last 10 months. So what has been occurring is that over the last several weeks, all of you council members and the mayor, as well as staff, have had a lot of conversations with members of the community and have received a lot of input and a lot of ideas about what to do and how to reopen Walnut Creek. We've had discussions with numerous individuals, with not-for-profit organizations, and with businesses. And we've assembled all of this information and these ideas and have synthesized this into a plan, which we intend to share with you today for about how we are going to rebound from this epidemic. So we have a number of staff here today who are going to present, who I would like to introduce. Our lead presenter will be our Assistant City Manager, Terry Kilgore, who also heads up our economic development activities. We have Colette Hanna, our Economic Development Manager, who, if I recall correctly, has been here 1 month to the day. So welcome, Colette, and nice to see you on screen. And I know even some of the city council members have not had a chance to meet Colette yet because she started amidst this crisis, which has made that a little more difficult. So we'll hear from Colette today. We will hear from one of our head traffic folks and associate engineer, Smadar Boardman. We'll hear from Andy Smith, who's in community development, Carla Hansen, our deputy city manager who oversees parking, and Janine Cavalli, who is in community development as well. We also have a number of other staff who are on the Zoom meeting here today to help answer questions. And with that, Terry, please take it from here.
Great, thank you so much, Dan. Mayor, Council, it's a pleasure to be here today to talk to you about the creative thinking that your staff has been doing about what can we as a city do to help support our businesses through this time of challenge and how we come out the other side of this. As Dan mentioned, we have a slate of presenters for you today. I'm going to frame it up for you first, but before I begin, I also wanted to thank some of the behind the scenes staff who are also on the call available to answer questions. Ethan Bindernagel, our planning manager, is here today. Ozzy Arce, one of our associate planners who's helped with parking and rethinking mobility, is online. Cassava Washington, our economic development assistant, who made this presentation look beautiful for you this afternoon. And Steve Waymeyer, our assistant director of public works and city engineer. So should you have any technical questions, we've got all our subject matter experts here with us today. So I'm very proud of this team because they've demonstrated quite a lot of creative and innovative thinking about not just how we do business today, but how we should be doing business at least on a temporary basis and maybe on a permanent basis as well, as we look to come out the other side of this crisis that Dan described for you. And one of the important team members I forgot to mention was the city attorney and his staff. I have to tell you, in the 6 cities I've worked with, Steve and his team were the most creative and flexible and provided valuable guidance and even ideas on how we could achieve some of these short-term proposals that we're giving you today. Our goal today is not just to talk about outdoor dining. While that's important, and we think that that's going to be a key part of our recovery, our staff took a broader look at how do we bring you a comprehensive look at ways that we can help our businesses come out of this crisis, not just recovering, but rebounding. And rebound was a strategic word choice for us. Rebound implies that we're springing back from a challenge and that we're going to be coming back better than we were before. And that is certainly our goal. Next slide, please. We didn't do this alone. As Dan noted, we reached out to our partners, Downtown Walnut Creek, the Chamber, the Convention Visitors Bureau. We reached out to businesses. We reached out to other cities to learn what everyone else is doing and what other ideas might be out there in the world. I will tell you, this has been one of the top items of discussion on our social media channels of late. Lots of people are writing in to tell us, about the importance of maybe closing streets or parking lots to make room for outdoor dining, how public art could be used to help reinvigorate our activities and invite people back. Some creative ideas around walk-up windows and signage that we'll talk about in some more detail here in a minute. But the theme here is that everyone understands that this is both a unique time and a unique challenge that requires a unique approach. And we will not do this by ourselves, but the city does have a key role to play as both the vision setter as well as the regulatory arm of our community. Next slide, please. So the challenges are real. You're going to hear enthusiasm from staff today and from me, because we're getting to talk about things we could do when we've all been feeling, I think, a little helpless in this great downturn. So we don't want to minimize that the challenges are real. We know that, we understand that, and we understand our community is hurting. And what we also know is that nobody knows exactly what the other side of this crisis looks like. We don't know exactly what things will look like on the other side, nor do we know when we will get there. But we do know a few things about the challenges we are going to be facing, at least in the short term. To our knowledge, we've got about 180 open businesses right now out of 4,200 commercial businesses in Walnut Creek. We've seen a staggering loss in revenue from restaurants and retail. Their businesses are down and will be slow to moderate in their recovery. We also know that the county is going to be putting in place and keeping in place physical distancing requirements for the foreseeable future, and that directly impacts how our businesses can use their existing space to serve their customers. Next slide, please. So the goals for the REBOUND program, as I noted, were to support our businesses and do it in a way that maximizes coordination and collaboration. We've been talking closely with our partners, as I mentioned, to make sure that we're not stepping over each other in our theming, in our programming, and making sure that we're bringing meaningful resources to our business community. One of the programs of the REBOUND approach is that it really be applicable citywide. This is not just a downtown program. A lot of our images are from downtown. It just photographs well, but we intend to create a program that helps all of our businesses citywide, and not just in retail and restaurant, but in our other industries like auto and hospitality and healthcare, that will be seeing changes to how they operate coming in the future days as well. The program is about flexibility and creativity, and many of the things we'll be talking about today are about swift decision making and how do we take our traditional processes that look at approving permanent changes and speed those up so that we can make some short-term temporary amendments to how we operate as a city. I will call out for you very clearly that the ideas floated here today are conceptual. We've not made final decisions. We're not saying we're doing X, Y, or Z with certainty. Part of that is to give us additional time to talk with our business community. And many of these will have to be tailored to site-specific requirements and unique conditions in the field. But the goal is to get those dialogues going now, use this time before we open back up our indoor dining, and really make sure that we're ready to roll when that situation appears. Next slide, please. So for today, we have your time booked for quite a while. Because we anticipate spending a bit of time with you discussing the various strategies under the REBOUND program, what it's going to take from a budget and staff hour perspective to achieve these, and leaving a lot of time for you to provide input and insights, knowing that this council speaks with segments of the community that we may not have heard from yet. So the item number one is intended to be the majority of today's discussion time. And we obviously will have time for public comment as well to get additional ideas that might be coming in. The second task for today is we're asking you to establish a REBOUND ad hoc committee that in partnership with some subject matter expert groups will help provide guidance as we make quick decisions. And then third is sort of the legal step we have to take to amend some of our existing code and processes so that we really can move swiftly, and we'll come to that at the end of our day today. Next slide, please. So the major challenge that you've all heard a lot about is social distancing. We need the space for dining as well as for retail in this time of keeping 6 feet apart. Some of the ideas interact with each other, and I'm just going to give you one example of why Some of these solutions are going to have to be site specific. One idea has been, close down Main Street. Great idea. Some communities are doing that. What we're finding and hearing back from some of our partners is, yes, but how do then we manage curbside pickups? How do we manage parking? Where do we do deliveries? How are we going to actually program this space? And so we have some ideas for you today. Again, not fully fleshed out, but we're trying our best to balance all of these different ideas and different needs for our business community. One of the big topics has been temporary signage. As a consumer, it's hard to tell sometimes if businesses are open right now or closed until you get up right next to their window and can see the signs, small signs they've posted, many of them on, handwritten on 8.5 by 11 paper. And so we're working to vision what could some more temporary signage look like in a way that doesn't look haberdash and messy, but how can we accommodate this in a way that helps communicate to our customers that businesses are open? Next slide, please. We know we're going to have to manage parking differently, both in the downtown and in some of our private shopping centers. As we look to create loading zones, outdoor dining space, we're going to have to look at the categories that we apply. We're going to have to look at our rate structures. How we bring back charging for parking is going to obviously be a hot topic, and we'd like to be able to be very nimble in that discussion. City restrictions exist that limit us in some ways on how we can repurpose both parking lots and empty storefronts at the moment, and so you'll be hearing some ideas on how to address those. What we do know is that speed matters, and our businesses are innovating rapidly. They're changing to online business models. They're creating new specials almost daily, it seems. They're using their social media channels very differently. And so we need to be able to react in a speedy and swift manner as well. And then one of our bigger challenges is how do we bring back the people? Walnut Creek is a beloved shopping and retail destination. How do we get them back? How do we get the word out, not just locally that we're open for business, but regionally? We pull a long way away. We pull people from Napa, we pull people from San Jose, and all around and in between. And so how do we get the word out regionally that we're open? And then when you get here, how do we make sure you know that it feels open and that you are welcome and that this place is a place to be? Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, citywide, we didn't want to just focus on downtown or just one street or two streets. We've got a very large city and we've got a large amount of businesses that we want to make sure are included in our thinking. Comprehensive, we've talked about not just retail restaurant, though we will start there. We will have more work to do. And we know that this approach is going to have to be iterative. We will come up with some ideas. We're going to pilot things. Some of them may not work like we thought. We may not love them as much, but if we do like them, we'll come back and talk at a later date after the crisis has subsided some on which things we'd like to make permanent and which things we'd like to go back to our traditional processes. I do want to pause there for a moment to highlight that we are thinking ahead. All of this is contingent on the county orders lifting. Some of the social media posts we've gotten, I think people think that it's already happened and outdoor dining and indoor dining are already allowed in our county, and they are not. But we do want to use this time very strategically to get ready. So when we get the green light from the county, that our businesses are ready to run with that. We need to move swiftly, we need flexibility, and we need to be thoughtful in our approach. Next slide, please. So there's 7 strategies that we're going to present to you today. We have multiple speakers who will do that. They're going to walk you through each one in more depth, so I won't do that here. But I wanted to let you know we will build in time for questions and feedback after every few strategies, because we really are looking for your input. We know that we don't have all the answers, and we want to make this an inclusive process where people have the opportunity to say what they know. And The other caveat I would say here is please know that the way we've structured the program, whatever goes into place in terms of authorization to delegate power or municipal code waivers is tied to the emergency proclamation itself. And so when council lifts that, these temporary strategies will go away unless there is some additional council action. So these are intended to be temporary. If you're a property owner or a business owner thinking of doing permanent signage or building a new building, we're still going to ask that you go through our regular processes because those are permanent changes. The changes we're talking about today are enabling temporary tweaks, pilots, creative ideas for this time of COVID. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Smadar Boardman, who's going to talk about our first strategy.
Thanks, Terry. Next slide, please. All right, good afternoon, Mayor Haskell and council members. I'm Smadar Boardman, city traffic engineer, and I'm just gonna go through the first couple strategies with you. So the first strategy is to create additional space for outdoor dining and retail display. And the current scenario of these existing conditions really is that we have limited interior space for restaurants and retail, and without potentially patio space too for some of those restaurants. And we do have these 6-foot physical distancing requirements that make the interiors not necessarily feasible for actually reaching a good capacity for dine-in or even retail sales. And then additionally, private centers are required to provide a minimum number of on-site parking spaces to meet the city's requirements. Next slide, please. So the proposed approach is to temporarily suspend land use regulations to allow outdoor dining and retail display, implement street changes or closures, and utilize private parking lots and plazas. Next slide, please. So we could reallocate on-street parking spaces for outdoor dining or retail sales. And it's kind of like Parking Day, that event we did last September where we temporarily repurposed parking spaces and set up tables and activities. Next. And I want to point out that these are different than parklets that we already have in downtown because these would be more temporary in nature. And the intent is that they can be more DIY and constructed from materials that are cheap and easy to get. Next. So now I'll talk about some ideas for how we can fit in some changes to the cross section of streets. And these are really just samples to get a sense of how much space we have to play with. We're not talking about specific streets right now. We want that ad hoc committee and subject matter experts to really weigh in on that. But here's an example of Main. This is the cross section of Main right now. And you can see we have pretty wide travel lanes. They're about 17 feet each and parking on both sides. Next. So we could put in a pop-up on one or both sides of the street, but I want to note that we don't have to restrict the pop-up to just the width of the parking spaces itself. You can see that that drive lane actually went from 17 feet to 10 feet, and now we've reallocated that space towards the pop-up. So that really gives you more bang for your buck with that outdoor dining or retail sales. And then one other thing is that we're still allowing for normal vehicle circulation. So we do have two-way circulation, just that the lanes are a bit narrower, but that's totally appropriate for this size and the speeds for those types of streets. Next. And then here we're showing a closure of Main, and you could have outdoor dining or retail sales along the curb, and along the middle of the street, you have pedestrians and bicycles moving through. And one thing I just want to point out is that 20 feet of clear space in the middle of the street is something that's required by Contra Costa Fire. But I'll get into that in a little more detail a bit later. Next. And then here's what Bonanza looks like today. I just wanted to show a cross section that was a bit more narrow, but you'll see we still have room to play with here. Next. So this is what it might look like with a pop-up instead of parking. Next. And then here's, we're showing a full street closure of Bonanza, and what we'd really like to do is get stakeholder input to determine where the locations of the pop-up or street closures would be. Then we would balance these requests to make sure they're feasible from an engineering feasibility and safety perspective, and then also as equitably as possible. And then every block is different in the entire city, so any changes to the street would have to be context sensitive. Next. I've actually read a few articles recently that bike sales apparently are on the rise nationally. I have a few friends who probably haven't ridden a bike since they were 10 or 12, and they're Bay Area residents, and they've been buying bicycles. So we could look into how we can add more comfortable, quick build type facilities for bicyclists. And we can also look at opportunities for more bike parking and marketing or advertising our existing bike parking too. Next. And then with reduced capacity inside of retail stores and restaurants, there's a decrease in parking demand. So an idea would be to temporarily allow stores to reuse some of those parking spaces in their private parking lots for outdoor seating or sales. Next. So an overarching theme with any of these changes is that there are going to be some constraints that we'll still have to adhere to just for safety's sake. When we look at preparing a comprehensive plan of the changes, there's a feasibility checklist we'd adhere to, including emergency vehicle access, traffic safety, vehicle circulation, making sure deliveries to businesses are still maintained, and whether that's relocating those or just making sure that they're still able to get in there, but maybe at a different time of day. Looking at any other rerouting of buses that we might need to do, and then ADA access. Next. So the second strategy, the current scenario really is that we've got, again, these limitations of interior space to accommodate purchases. And the new county guidelines allow for curbside pickup, and essential retailers are already doing curbside pickup right now. Next. So the proposed approach is to create a comprehensive plan to manage parking, use the city right-of-way, including sidewalks and parking spaces, and then collaborate and coordinate with shopping centers and downtown businesses. Next.
Smadar, before you go forward, I'm sorry, I'm being told by folks that I'm still up on screen instead of you. So I'm hoping our technical folks can swap. Thank you.
She's up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dan. All right, so the second strategy, we've got these curbside pickup zones, and they're similar to our existing loading zones. We actually had parking sensors installed into our downtown parking spaces. They had wrapped up the installation right before the shelter in place took effect. So we've been able to track real time how parking is being used in downtown. And a majority of the parking activity that we're seeing actually are people who are coming in, parking for a duration of about 10 minutes or less, and really just doing that curbside pickup. And so since we're repurposing parking spaces for pop-ups or closing street segments, we're going to have fewer parking spaces overall on the street. And that's just one of the trade-offs that we need to consider. But in order to still make it easy for curbside pickup for retail or restaurants, restaurant to-go orders, we would want to kind of reserve or provide these curbside pickup zones. That way we can ensure quick turnover spaces are allocated. And this picture is just an example of custom signage that we could make for Walnut Creek. And we can also figure out the duration that you would stay in that space depending on needs. It could change depending on what block you're on or what the needs are of the adjacent businesses, but it would still be clear even though it is flexible. And those locations would be based on balancing feedback from stakeholders and then feasibility, and then of course looking at it from an equitable lens. And then the last thing I want to point out for curbside pickup zones is this is something that we can do now. Retailers will be able to do this curbside pickup. It's not that big of a deal to implement tomorrow, only because or today, because we do have parking spaces available right now. But as the competing interests start to occur and people start to get moving, get to work, or businesses start to open back up, we will need to see that designation happen. Next.
Good evening, Mayor Haskew and members of the council. My name is Janine Cavalli. I'm a senior planner and I'll be presenting this next strategy to you. Strategy 3 is about providing more flexibility with our current temporary signage requirements. The intent of this strategy is really to acknowledge that these are unique circumstances that we're in, and businesses need to communicate to their patrons in new and different ways. And so we want to be able to accommodate that. So some of those ways that they need to communicate are around health and safety protocols, maybe some new directional signage to move people to where the pickup or pickup orders are, things like that. But our existing sign regulations do have strict limitations on temporary signage. Next slide. So the idea here of what we would be proposing is to temporarily suspend some of these sign regulations to allow businesses to display some of this new additional signage. So again, informational signage around health and safety protocols, or directional signage to direct patrons to where they can place an order or pick up their order. And then again, as Terry mentioned earlier on, just really to let patrons know which businesses are open. So next slide, please. So here's just some illustrations of some of the temporary signage that I'm speaking about already taking place in the city of Walnut Creek. So some of these "We're Open" signs available for curbside and pickup. And these are the types of temporary signs that we would want to relax regulations on so that they could be there for longer periods than what's currently allowed. Next. I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague, Carla Hansen, who's going to provide an overview of the next strategy.
Well, until Carla gets here, I'll provide a little color. Carla, interrupt me when you arrive. So one of the challenges is the balance between parking our cars that we need to get to places and allowing space for people and activity. And especially in the downtown, we have a comprehensive parking management program that is built on the assumption that we are a fully functional and operating business district. And right now we know parking demand is down dramatically. And how we bring it back is a key element of our overall economic development strategy. Right now, most of the management and governance of parking is required to go through the Transportation Commission, and there are set rate structures and zones that we're expected to follow, as well as time limits. And I think there's Carla.
I am now unmuted, as it just told me.
Excellent.
Happy to have you finish that awesome intro, but glad to be with you all this afternoon. Thank you, Terry, for jumping in on that intro. So echoing what Terry said, yeah, we are in a very unique scenario with parking downtown. I don't think we've ever, I've never been before this council saying that we have low demand for parking. So a first for us, for sure. But really, as we are thinking ahead during this crisis, the goals of our parking program are the same. We want to provide affordable and available parking when people are looking for it. And as we are currently in a very low demand situation where people are really only needing quick parking spaces, as Smadar said, 10, 15-minute parking spaces, quick turnaround. As business demand increases, parking will also increase. As employees come back downtown to work, people will need places to park, and we will need to adapt to that. So currently, all parking is free. Our garages are closed to daily parkers, and we are not enforcing. Again, that will change. And we've got some ideas of, in anticipation of that change, what we could potentially do. And next slide, please. So really, we have a very progressive parking program. Most of what you see in our program is usually what big cities are doing, not mid-size and small cities. And so we have the bones that we have in our program are good. And so we want to maintain those bones, but monitor how they're being used in a new situation, such as recovery through the crisis, and adapt to those things. So I'll be talking through some of our ideas in a way of maintaining most of what we have, monitoring very closely, and really hearing from businesses and our stakeholders of what they need, and then adapting quickly to meet those needs. This does include changing rates, time limits, and some of our parking zones. So I wanted to refresh everybody on, next slide, please, on what do we have in place. So as I mentioned, this council put in place a parking ordinance 5 or 6 years ago that was very progressive. It established an 85% occupancy. So really what that means is whenever someone comes downtown, they can find a space very quickly. There's a few spaces open on every block. They're not circling around and becoming traffic, and allows our Transportation Commission to adjust parking fees and hours to meet that target. So this, the 85% occupancy goal is an industry standard that we would want to maintain. It's good parking practice, and it also creates a good public perception of parking. When you can find a parking space, you always get a little bit excited when you don't have to look for one. So we want to maintain that excitement and good feelings of parking downtown. We also take a very zoned approach for parking, and we would maintain that. It's a good practice to keep the areas of your where parking is most convenient, close to where folks want to go. We want to keep those spaces available, turning over quickly, and the spaces that are further out more for longer term parking. So currently, for those who may be new to Walnut Creek parking, we have 2 existing zones downtown. Our downtown core area, which is the red area on the map to your right, where we charge $2 an hour and we have 2-hour time limits. And those are those really convenient spaces that we want turned over quickly, and people want to park right up front. Those are the spaces for them. And then we have our purple pole zone area, which is our north, west, and south areas on the map. And these are our longer term parking areas for on-street parking. It's $1 an hour, so a little bit less expensive, and there are no time limits, so you can park all day. And then sprinkled within our downtown zone, we have 3 parking garages where we charge 50 cents to $1 an hour, and the first hour is free. And we also have monthly parking passes available. So these are our zones that we have, and we would want to maintain these zones because it works, and we would want to make tweaks where we can as demand changes. And really, we want to continue managing these zones to an 85% target. So as Smadar mentioned, we are going to have some areas in this downtown core area where we're going to have curbside pickup. We will have areas where parking spaces are being reused for outdoor seating, outdoor activities, and really more open for pedestrian activity. And so therefore, with those ideas, we're thinking there may be 75 to about 125 spaces that we need to repurpose for people, if you will. And so therefore, we want to make sure we're expanding our quick turnaround areas. So we would be broadening our core zone, that red downtown zone, out into our purple pole zone. So changing some spaces, which we're thinking about 70 spaces, could be repurposed into those quick turnaround areas. Next slide, please. And also, as Sminar mentioned, we do have the ability to monitor our parking demand very closely. And we want to experiment with how, we don't know what demand is going to look like. Demand was very predictable downtown. We had 2 peaks. We had lunch and dinner. We knew it was very stable. We're coming into this time really with our eyes wide open and ready to monitor that data and adapt as we go. That may mean that the rates that we have in place currently are not the right rates, and we need to adjust them down or up. Similarly, with our time limits, we've heard for a number of years that 2-hour time limit that we have in the core was too short for folks to really stay and enjoy, but still have that convenient parking space close. So another experiment would be to extend the time limit and see how that goes and monitor what the turnover looks like. So again, we're walking through a time where we're not quite sure what parking demand is going to look like and what people's parking habits may be. We can make some predictions, but we have some good zones in place that we can build off of and tweak as we go. And just to, next slide, please. Just to give you a sense of what, going back to broadening our core zone, this is some of the streets that we think may be needed to provide more of those quick turnaround spaces. So this would be our purple pole areas these are streets that are currently filled with purple poles. So these streets potentially could be downtown core if demand needed to be, or bode for it. Next slide, please.
Thanks,
I'm
Carla.
landing on the question.
Thank you, Carla, Janine, and Smadar. Council, we're going to pause there. We've thrown a lot of ideas at you very quickly on the first 4 strategies, and so we wanted to pause and see if there were any questions on what we've covered so far.
Thank you. Thank you. I was wondering if we were going to do questions per speaker or questions per organization, but you've taken control and I'm happy for it. I'm assuming that there are questions from the council members, and Justin, I can't see you. I don't know if you're participating in this. So I'm looking for hands, see if there's anybody on council that has any further questions. Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Thank you, and thank all of you for obviously a lot of work that's been put into this. I know several of us have been involved in different business discussions with some of the downtown business owners to come up with some different ideas, and it looks like you've incorporated a lot of those. We haven't talked about a few differences. I don't know if that's going to be coming up later. Mm-hmm. And I probably am going to have some more questions after we hear from the public as well. And so let me know if this will come up later. When should we discuss this? But one of the questions would be, how would we dissuade employees of these businesses from parking in those spaces? The whole idea is to open it up. Uh-oh. Do you still hear me?
Yes.
It looked like things have frozen. So the whole idea is to attract people to come downtown and visit the businesses. We know that employees have been a hindrance to that in the past, especially when parking has been free or low. So how can we dissuade employees from the downtown businesses from parking in those spots where the whole idea is to attract people to come down? And then are we going to be involved with any of the discussions for enforcement or permitting when it comes to restaurants for their kitchen spaces? We know those tend to be very narrow in the kitchens, and social distancing is going to be a real issue with them, regardless of if there's outdoor dining. And also, I know the discussion had been coming up regarding outdoor beverages, and if that would be possible with the ABC laws and being able to change those and modify them on an interim basis. So those are the questions that I have. I don't necessarily need them all answered right now. I'm hoping this will come up throughout the course of our conversation.
Great,
Okay,
thank you, Council. I'm sorry, Mayor. If I could just clarify, we do have 3 more strategies to go. And so yes, to Councilmember Wilkes or Vice Mayor Pro Tem, excuse me, Wilkes' point, we do have some additional ground to cover, and some of those will come up as we go forward.
Okay, I do see that Matt and Justin both have their blue hands up, but Councilmember Cindy Silva had her hand up in the picture first. So would you go ahead, Cindy, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and I apologize, but somehow the screen view that I have, the hand raising feature is disappeared. So
Make it go out of full screen.
oh, there it is. Thank you. All right, there I am. Thank you very much, staff, for this, and I truly appreciate it because we have needed to have a fast response to this and to be ready, and so I appreciate the emphasis on that. One of my questions, and you don't have to answer it now, but would be how quickly can we get this all done? Some of the strategies involve a few hundred hours of staff time. If you make that linear, it will be 2021 by the time we get done, but I'm sure that's not the idea. So maybe at some point you can answer that question. I had the question also about the alcoholic beverage situation. One of my questions that I hope we can cover is how will we if we allow restaurants to allow dining in the right of way, how do we manage the tendency for people to move their own tables and congregate and not maintain that required social distancing? I do believe it's a block by block problem. Thank you for using that phrase. And the other question I had, and it's actually for Carla, so it is current. It is, what technology are we currently have in place on our parking spaces downtown that will be taking advantage of?
Terry, are we going to collect questions and then answer them sequentially as I write them down, or that one looked like it could have been answered right away?
Yeah, I would propose that since we just talked about parking, that Carla go ahead and address that one and the employee parking question as well.
Happy to answer the employee question from Mayor Pro Tem Wilk first. So you're absolutely right. We heard this from a few of our stakeholders previously, that once employees start coming back downtown, they're going to want to park close to. I think it was Bob Power from ParkSmart who said people are lazier than they are cheap, and folks want to park close. So we will see. We will see what happens. However, what we can do is make our garages, which are fairly inexpensive now, the places where people who are staying longer term, they're working a shift, they're working at a full day of work, they're parking there and off the street. We're making that available, as we always have. That's been the policy of this council, is making those garage spaces really the more affordable, longer term parking. And similarly with our purple poles, those are less expensive all day parking that folks can utilize. So really providing more carrots, if you will, for availability of longer term parking for our employees to make sure that they have options to do that. And then for the folks who still do want to park close, again, that rate is a little bit higher. So if folks are a little bit more price sensitive, they may choose to park further away, so they pay less for parking. However, if we are in a stage where we're not charging, then we would be doing that through enforcement of our time limits that are in the core zone.
So Carla, I asked you a technology question, which really drives back to the knowing, I think, occupancy, et cetera. So.
Absolutely. So a couple of things. One, as Smadar mentioned, we do have sensors in the ground which tell us real time who is parking, how long they've been parking. And that will enable us to really focus in on what demand patterns we're seeing on a week-to-week basis. It's really a daily basis, but you would want to look at it on an average week-to-week, and what we need to, how our patterns look and what we need to charge and what time limits are the most appropriate. Similarly, I know I did get a question from a member of the public around when we do start charging and the cleanliness of meters and touching meters, touching public things in a time where hand washing is we don't want to touch doorknobs and things that are just more communal. And so we would be really pushing the use of our Park Mobile app, which is another technology piece where you don't have to touch the meter. You don't even have to return to the meter when your meter is expired. You can use the app. And so we would be also using that technology to make sure folks are safe.
May I ask a follow-up question regarding occupancy and the technology? So we will be able to know when we get to the 85% level during the peak demand hours. But if we remove, let's say 50% of the parking spaces from the long-term parking inventory, we'll say long-term being longer than 10 minutes, either because it's outdoor dining and retail spaces or it's curbside pickup, are we going to recalibrate when if we have 100 spaces downtown and it's 85 spaces is 85%, and we suddenly go to 50 spaces available for customer parking, will the 85% then be at, why can't I do that math fast enough? It's going to be something like 37.5.
We can adjust that denominator for sure. We have that ability to do that now with our meters, but with the sensors, we can also do that.
So it will be a move. It's a dynamic number based on what the total inventory is in that segment. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Matt Francois, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to all the staff who've done a tremendous effort in getting this together. This is a lot of great information. I shared Council Member Silva's concern / comment about how fast we can implement some of these changes. My questions really relate to tracking the baseline assumptions. So on the parking, when are we envisioning that we would start charging for parking again?
So as you may remember from Tuesday evening, the budget assumption is that we would not start charging until October 15th. However, knowing that things will be shifting quickly, so the county orders may be changing in the next month, 2 months, we want to be able to adapt. So as we're seeing, if we start seeing parking occupancy hitting that 85%, and we start hearing from folks downtown that, there really are no spaces, we need turnover, et cetera, then we would reconsider that.
And you'll be able to tell that from the sensors that just went in?
Yes.
Excellent. On this street closure, I think this is maybe for Smadar or Terry, were the assumptions that the streets, some or all of them, would be closed all day or just for the evening hours? What is staff's thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So I think the intent really is to figure out what the needs are from the businesses and other stakeholders. But there are certain, just things that we should consider, which is how easy is it to move a pop-up or like that structure. So anything that's a physical structure that's harder to move is going to take more manpower. And so we could do some closures that are more permanent and ongoing, and then there could be some closures that are maybe on weekends or something like that where we might expect it to be more busy. But we're flexible. I don't think we have any specific goal in mind. We would just like to get some feedback from the business owners.
That's good. So it's not necessarily a one size fits all, or wouldn't need to be, you're saying?
No, absolutely not. Definitely block by block, context sensitive.
And are there certain streets you'd be more concerned about blocking off and closing from a traffic impact standpoint?
I think for if we're talking about just maybe the idea of doing the pop-ups on the side of the street, just consideration needs to be given to any street that might be a higher speed. So California or Broadway may not be as suitable, just because we want to have those occurring next to vehicles that are going pretty slow. They're probably not even going to be driving 25 miles per hour in the downtown with so much stuff going on, which is a good thing. We want to slow speeds down. It's a better condition with mixing with pedestrians and bicycles. And then for the closures, I think it really just depends on circulation. We would really want to hear back from the businesses, and then we could really determine what the feasibility is. We want to make sure that we retain access to some end for all, for the businesses, that they can still get deliveries. If we need to move that, or at least make that occur at a different time so that business can still occur, we would do that too. So it's a pretty comprehensive plan, but we just need all the input, and then we can figure out what the output would be.
Sure.
And if I can, I'm sorry, Councilmember, I was just going to add on to what Smidar was saying, which is that WCD is actively polling businesses block by block to talk to them about that balance between full street closure, just using the parking spaces, what kind of amount of curbside pickup space we need to leave. And I do think that we're going to see some variety of solutions throughout the downtown, block by block, maybe street by street. So that is one of our next steps. We're supposed to meet with WCD, I believe it's on Tuesday next week, to hear the preliminary feedback. And to the question you asked, as well as Councilmember Silva, our implementation timeline is as much as we can get done now and as quickly as we can, especially around outdoor dining and outdoor retail display space. We think we can move quickly. There's a proposal by Walnut Creek Downtown to do some fundraising for the barricades that this would require, maybe blend in some community art with it. And so we are all busy working on how we would implement as quickly as possible. So while it's a lot of hours, there's a lot of staff members, and I realized I forgot to mention 3 key ones. Sean Conley from the police department has been actively working with ABC, much to Mayor Pro Tem Wilt's question. Scott Dennison and Steve Huss from Arts and Rec have been actively engaged, and you'll hear more about the pieces that touch their world as well. So it's a lot of hours, but it's also a lot of hands. So we're hoping that that makes light work.
I appreciate that. And my final question, and it might be more of a public service announcement, is that while the city is currently not charging for parking, are the owners of the private parking lots, as far as you're aware, continuing to charge? Because that's like 70% of the spaces downtown.
No, they are not. We've gotten word from our private parking partners that they are also not charging and planning to also monitor demand and will start to charge when they also are hitting that 85%. So at this point, we're working together to make sure we're making space available for everybody.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Councilmember Waddell, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the staff for putting this together. My question is around what you're actually looking for from a feedback perspective. It looks like as part of this staff report, you're looking at creating 2 specific, I don't know, are you calling them oversight subcommittees or ad hoc committees? So are you looking for us to go through the minutia of this and make comments on individual items or how they would work? Or are you looking for, are we good with the approach towards this, the strategies, if we have any additional strategies, or are there strategies that we just don't want to even address? And then allow the subcommittees to really dig into the details and work with the SMEs.
That's a great question, Councilmember Waddell. It's the latter. So what we're hoping to do today is walk you through each of the strategies first, see if there's any that you either love or can't live with or think needs some additional tweaking, or even just considerations you want to make sure that we think about as we build the more detailed implementation plan around each of these. So we've gone through the first 4, we got 3 more, and then we're going to circle back around to talk more about the proposed structure of the ad hoc committee and what changes we would need to have approved in Muni Code and in current processing and decision making. And that's our 3rd item of the day. So right now, questions just on the specific strategies that we're talking about at the moment.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn. Have you considered things like signage at each of the intersections that say what store and restaurant is open and what status they're in? For example, some restaurants may choose not to go full bore and keep their takeout business only. So is that a consideration that you've looked at?
WCD had originally started looking at the kiosks that already exist in downtown and then realized those aren't quite the right place for that information. So they are looking at some bigger signage to indicate that the district is open, but no, I haven't heard that suggestion up to this point. So it's a good one of how can we give consumers more detailed information. We do have the open business webpage, which will stay open, and we're actually looking to expand with our partners to allow businesses to offer specials and do some other things that I'll let Colette talk about here in a minute. Okay. But physical signage, no, we haven't talked about that. So thank you.
I'm just thinking I'm driving down the street and I know where my restaurant is. It'd be really, or my pickup place is. It'd be really nice to know it was worth the trip parking the car.
Great.
My question is a little variation on what Councilmember Francois asked, and that is that are there some addresses that absolutely we can't balance out the expansion of streets? And what came to mind, the most specific one I could think of was Civic and Montecatini, and the fact that there is just no space on either side of it. And Giamona, and I can't imagine screw around with traffic on Civic.
Mm-hmm. I'll let Smadar answer in more depth, but generally, yes, we've tried to stay away from big impacts on Civic, Broadway, and even being very cautious about impacts on Mount Diablo as well, as we look at the circulation patterns that those facilitate. So I don't know if Smadar wants to say a little bit more.
I think that pretty much covers it. What's nice right now is that we don't have as much traffic volume as we typically see. And it's probably going to take quite some time for those traffic volumes that we would typically see from commuters to really pick up again. So it's kind of a good opportunity as long as we have the ability to make sure that the speeds on that street are appropriate. That's something that we could look into. But generally speaking, if it's a 4-lane road, we're probably not looking at any kind of closure, just because it probably is a big connector for vehicles.
And there's no way we can balance it out for those restaurants that can't take advantage of the street closures.
I think we could, we'd really have to just give some consideration to where those stores are located. And again, like I said, traffic volumes are low, so there is some opportunity, but we can definitely look into it.
Okay, one other sort of idea I had is that, and this was also off of what Councilmember Silva said, the parking garages, which are now closed, can be opened and used for longer term parking. Can we designate levels so that, for example, employees could have the top levels and then the patrons could have the lower levels? Is it too complicated to do anything like that?
We do a little bit of that now with our restrictions on the first 2 floors of our garages. for the 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We reserve those first 2 floors for, we have no parking for those hours to push all of our more longer term parkers up to the top. And then the more shorter term folks get the bottom. So we could do something similar to that. It's hard to determine who is an employee long-term parker versus a short-term parker, but we could put some signage in place and regulations in place to facilitate that, or just keep our current signs up and hopefully they're and enforce them.
Okay, thank you. And my last kind of, I tried to be a little out of the box here. Have we thought about closing the entire core area and setting up some kind of jitney system to get people back and forth?
I have not heard that one yet.
Oh, I got an own one. I got one on my own. Yay!
You win the game, jitney. Yep. Brand new idea. So no, that is a possibility. As we mentioned before, we're really wanting to talk to the businesses to hear, how we can help without doing harm. And so if they're open to a full closure, I don't think you'd see any or hear any opposition from staff. We just didn't want to assume that they would be okay. But if we did close down the whole core, you're absolutely right. We would need some way to help circulate people to the various parking areas and out to the outside of the ring. So nope, that's a creative idea. I will make note of that.
I'm also trying to think of how to create short-term jobs for people who are temporarily stuck in this never land of COVID. Okay, Justin, is your hand still up because you have another question, or did you not take it down?
Sorry, I just lowered it.
Okay, thank you. I believe we're finished with our questions in this section, and I now encourage us to go on.
Great. We're going to move on to strategy 6 then. And I believe that's Andy Smith.
It's Janine again.
It's Janine. Thank you, Janine.
No problem. All right, so for strategy 6, we're looking at greater flexibility for storefronts and outdoor operations. And really the intent here is, again, since there's such strict limitations on the use of interior space right now, looking at ways that businesses can move their operations, either it's up to the storefront or even spill out of their interior space. So spilling out either into a public right-of-way and maybe making some adjustments to their existing storefront. So let's look at some of those ideas on the next slide, please. So the proposed approach to allow for greater flexibility in business operations would be to temporarily suspend land use regulations and allow for some of these other ideas. So one idea being a walk-up window, where maybe there's, with some simple modifications to an existing window, that could become a place where you place your order and or pick up your items. Other ideas that we're contemplating are some movable kiosks. Again, maybe it's a kiosk that kind of takes over the front entrance. It's kind of an inserted little kiosk there, or maybe it's something that you can move out outside of your business. Again, mostly to take orders and do contactless pickup. And then finally, expansion of some of the outdoors, of your interior operations outdoors. Next slide, please. So here's just a couple photographs to illustrate on the left-hand side what that walk-up window might look like. And then on the right-hand side, bringing some of those interior dining tables, moving them outside, again, either into the public right-of-way or into private parking lots. Next slide. And then strategy 7, this one is really about, okay, if we, close some of those streets that were just discussed by Smadar, how can we activate those spaces, make them vibrant, exciting, interesting places to be? So, you know, with our leisure center closed downstairs or downtown, not downstairs, there is currently a lack of arts and entertainment venues downtown. So when some of our thinking on the next slide is to bring, on the next slide, please, is to bring some of that experience outdoors. So trying to create that vibrant downtown experience by installing temporary public art, programming public space with music or other types of performances. And we're proposing to do that by suspending time limits on our temporary activity permits, which currently there's a variety of different timeframes, but they're currently around 3 to 5 days to allow some of these outdoor activities. So we'd be looking to suspend those time limits. Next slide. And then here's just a few examples of how this concept might be implemented. The top left, that you may remember that we had temporary installations of pianos last year. If we were to do something similar, we might have sanitizer spray sitting there on the piano. But that's just, you know, to illustrate the idea of something that's temporary, it's not permanent. And then the upper right, that's our first Wednesday event. So that kind of gives you a visual clue as to what a street closure could become, with, you know, activities taking over the street. And then on the bottom is the proposed plaza at Lesher that I believe will be is still targeting to open later this summer. Next slide.
Thanks, Janine. Before we jump into Colette's section on marketing, I wanted to clarify just a couple of things on these last two strategies. One, when we talk about outdoor premises, embedded in that idea is the fact that many people are going to want to take their adult beverages with them outside, or be served beverages outside with their meals. And so our police department has been actively coordinating with our local ABC office to talk about how that can be accomplished. And so that is part of the dialogue happening. If we create this outdoor dining space or even close whole streets, we're working with them actively to see how we can accommodate outdoor beverages. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight is we love activation, and we can't wait till we get back to large crowds together, but we're not there yet, we understand. And so please keep in mind, when you look at these photos, we understand that any activation would require appropriate social distancing to make sure that we're meeting public health requirements. So we're just trying to give you ideas of the types of things that might help bring a sense of life back and welcome people back to our downtown. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colette Hanna, our Economic Development Manager, to walk you through the following strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Good afternoon, Mayor Haskew and members of the council. Colette Hanna, as Terry mentioned, Economic Development Manager. And as Dan mentioned, yes, it's been 1 month exactly today. So definitely glad to be here. I want to talk about what we can do. So as we're talking, and you may have noticed that we're technically out of order with this strategy. This is strategy number 5. But what we're doing here is, as we're talking about all these different ways that we're going to be activating streets and opening up the streets to pedestrian-only activity, what we're doing with our parking, and as we're doing this great program, how can we promote? How can we market that and make sure that we're bringing consumers and potential consumers back into these areas within downtown and throughout the city? And so this is definitely a collaborative process. Discussions have already been underway, and talking to Walnut Creek Downtown and the CVB and Broadway Plaza so that we can coordinate our efforts. As you know, a lot of customer inquiries, a lot of inquiries from those within the community and outside of the community of what's going to happen going forward. How are we going to accommodate businesses, from the businesses as well as the residents receiving those inquiries? And while we have strong messaging it's still individual. And I think Walnut Creek Together, that program that's been recently launched, is a great example of coordination and collaboration. And so we want to capitalize on that and do more of that kind of thing. We're obviously talking to multiple audiences. We're talking to locals, we're talking to residents, we're talking to the business community, those that would visit the shops and restaurants, as well as outside of the area though. And so we're doing that currently. We want to expand on that for sure. And then we have the open business platform, which is, I believe was referred to earlier, of where we have those businesses that are essential are listed there, but it's a great platform that I think we can capitalize on and use more for more businesses as they do open up, because we do have all of the businesses listed there, but just noting specifically those that are open currently. And next slide. So in terms of an approach that we're looking at, definitely to coordinate our campaigns and coordinate our messaging and to centralize our response. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, about how we might want to do that. But as we're delivering that message, being able to have it be consistent, being able to amplify that through the different channels that we'll look at later as well. And then, as I mentioned, outreach to local and regional audiences. We want to be able to appeal to those that are looking for a day trip, that are looking for maybe a weekend getaway. And how can we create the messaging and promote, again, the work that we're doing through this REBOUND program for this is a safe place to come to. This is a great place to visit. And being able to deliver that in a consistent way, in a consistent format. And then again, highlighting what is happening downtown, but also citywide, being able to appeal to who we are as a full community and being able to attract to all of those attractions. Excuse me. And then again, just leveraging the open business platform as more businesses open. We have a map within that platform that allows visitors to visit different parts of the city, what is going on in the downtown area. So again, just leveraging that and expanding that and encouraging our businesses to use that as part of their promotional tools as well. Next slide. So this is just a little example of how we can use the individual efforts of the different community stakeholders and the activity that they're already doing to extend and amplify our message. So this is just looking at social media and just looking at what we're doing as the city, Walnut Creek downtown, the CVB and Chamber, Broadway Plaza, and then the recent launch of the Help Save Walnut Creek Facebook page. So as you can see, there's a number of followers there that we can extend a message through. And so what we're trying to do with this coordination is amplify that message through these various channels, but also can be consistent that this is a safe, fun place to come to and be able to highlight the work that we're doing as a part of this REBOUND program. I think about things like the one that Carla mentioned with the app in terms of parking. That's something that we can promote as a safe place and as a place that you can enjoy coming to, because we've set up things to make it enjoyable and to make it safe. Next slide. So as we're sending that message out, we want to have a centralized place for them to come and visit and be able to look at. So this isn't something that's in place right now, but it's something that we might want to look at, is having a landing page that is digital, a website that visitors would come to, that's a central place that again delivers that message, but in a centralized location that highlights the activity and highlights the programs and highlights the elements of this REBOUND program that make it an inviting, welcoming place to come to, whether you're local or whether you're within the Bay Area, or appealing to those, again, looking for a weekend trip throughout California, where they might want to just hop in the car and be able to go a couple hours away and have an enjoyable experience. Next slide. And these might be elements within that landing page. Again, nothing solid here. These are just some images to kind of convey what a landing page might look like and how we want to encourage visitors to come and explore the dining, having pictures of what that looks like now. The entertainment plazas, the little vignettes that will be created in different areas and the activation that we'll be able to do, what the shopping experience is like. And then again, continuing to promote this open business platform and continuing to encourage our business community to use that. So the point here is to, as we're doing all this work and creating this environment, we definitely want to support the business community in our attraction efforts, in our promotion of what we're doing, but how it's also accommodating their ability to reopen in a safe and enjoyable manner. And with that, next slide, we'll turn it back over to Terry.
Thank you, Colette. Yes, so we're early on in figuring out what our messaging exactly will be. I think Colette did a nice job of showing you the areas that we know we need to focus in and some of the opportunities ahead of us. But what this is not meant to be is a launch of a branding strategy per se, or a communications program. This is placeholder, knowing we need to go in and do more work in those spaces, both with our partners and with our local businesses. So that's the overview of the REBOUND program. I want to loop back to a couple of questions you all asked earlier that we didn't answer quite as directly. So we know we have more work to do in each of these spaces. One of those is, as we create outdoor dining and space for outdoor retail display, and even temporary signage and some of these other programs, we know we need to set up the mechanisms by which to approve those changes and to ensure that those spaces are being maintained and managed proactively. Our initial thinking on that is to carve out specific spaces for individual businesses that they're responsible for. When we floated that idea with our downtown Walnut Creek partnership, they seem to think that businesses would be excited about the ability to have the space, to the point where they'd be willing to make sure that we stay in bound with regulations and keep things clean. We know that we would need to do more work around our messaging, and that we would need to do more work with our private shopping center partners on how to change the flow of traffic in their centers, so that they can also participate in outdoor dining and such. So this is the beginning step. We know that nothing comes for free, but we are looking at this as an investment in our business community, which, so as they go, so go we. And so we really want to do our level best effort to help support our businesses by loosening up some of these regulations, getting creative with some temporary opportunities, and piloting some things to see if they're worth pursuing on a long-term basis. So the staff report breaks down each of the detailed expenses by strategy. Grand total, we are looking at about $160,000 that we are seeking to invest. Some of these could be offset with partnerships, we're hoping. I do want to give kudos again to the Walnut Creek downtown for offering to figure out how to help us with barricades if we should close the streets in downtown, to make sure those are both safe and an asset, maybe doing some community art and creative programming of that. We call out specifically the staff hours because we know that some of these activities will pull us from typical duties, which may slow work on other priorities that the city has. And we know that with the recent budget cuts, both for fiscal year 20 as well as what we're looking for in fiscal year 21, this would have to be a one-time funding taken on either through reserves or contingencies. This is some of these things we can do just with staff hours, but to really make this program all that it needs to be, to really support our businesses, we will need some working capital to program. So with that, I want to highlight for you where we are in today's flow. Next slide. We've talked about the REBOUND program, the strategies under each of the sub challenges. We talked about the budget and the staff hours involved, and we want to pause there before we go into talking about the ad hoc committee and the legal magic that needs to happen, and see if you have any questions or ideas that we haven't already covered, or questions from before that we didn't answer fully. So I'll pause there, Mayor.
Thank you. And I really appreciate it, because I think that in the contingency, I'm going to ask council's permission to open public comment even before we move on to goals 2 and 3, because I believe there will be a lot of people who want to stay in the idea section. Can I have some head nods? I know Mayor Pro Tem has a question. I'm not ignoring it, but is that okay with everybody in terms of, good, okay. So Mayor Pro Tem, you have a question. And then this is, before you go, this is my notice to the attendees who have questions and ideas about what we've already, about the rebound possibilities. How the city accomplishes it is not yet open for this, but please, we want to hear your ideas and your feedback on what we've done so far. Mayor Pro Tem, would you ask your question, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Terry, and everybody on the team in presenting everything. One thing we haven't heard about is Broadway Plaza, and how much involvement do we have with Broadway Plaza, with them asking about their common areas to be used for restaurants, with some of the signage, and is that going to be something that we're just leaving up to Broadway Plaza, or are we working with them to have a cohesive effort with what we're doing in downtown as well, the core area as well?
Thank you for the question. I'll start, and then if Smadar or Colette has anything to add. We've been in regular communication with Broadway Plaza. In fact, they were sad they couldn't be with us here today. We've been coordinating both on ideas for curbside pickup, around the ability to utilize their plazas differently to allow restaurants to spill out into that space and potentially program it differently. And then we've been talking to them about marketing as well. So we are keeping those communication channels open and are including them in our thinking. I don't know if staff wants to add anything else.
Great, thank you.
I'll just add quickly, just to kind of echo what Terry was just saying. Yes, we've already started the conversation, since they are a major attraction for local and outside of the area, of how we can, again, be consistent and consolidate our messaging. So they're definitely a part of those conversations.
Super. Glad to hear it. At this moment, I am going to open it for the first round of public comment. And if you are interested in letting us know about your ideas, concerns about what we've talked about so far, please indicate that you would like to talk, and I will ask the city clerk to take over.
Okay, we are bringing in Catherine Baker.
Yep.
Here. Hi, this is Catherine Baker. Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me. Thank you, Mayor Haskew and our council members, Vice Mayor Wilk. I just want to, first of all, say I'm joining you, not just as a former assembly member who represented Walnut Creek and really finds her heart and love for our entire town very strong, but as the president of the Diablo Regional Arts Association, as you know, the nonprofit support arm for the Lesher Center for the Arts. We at the DRAA feel very strongly drive and commitment to be part of this rebound. And rather than go through every single detail of what the city has so strongly put together here today, I want to make an announcement of very specific concrete items that we're prepared to come forward with right now in partnership in the rebound. It's kind of a great trifecta. There's three wonderful ones. The first is a $150,000 immediate grant and funding to adapt performances at the Lesher Center to our new circumstances, and to immediately put investment in not only innovative virtual experience for folks in their homes, but at the center, consistent with social distancing and throughout our downtown community. And that grant is available from the DRAA, $100,000 that we're prepared to spend, and $50,000 from the Lesher Center the Lesher Foundation, of course, a wonderful partner in Walnut Creek. And that's just the start. That's going to be the first step of immediate investment that we're prepared to make in adapting our arts. The next one is very exciting. It was mentioned a little bit today, and that's the Rudney Center. We are thrilled that the construction has continued and that we are going to be seeing the opening of that center late this summer, early fall. And that is a perfect opportunity for us to have outside arts bringing quality of life to our area, and I think a spark of economic vitality in our downtown. And then in partnership with all of our community and our 30th anniversary of the Lesher Center, we have a great opportunity to sell pavers, bricks, named bricks at the Lesher Center in the Rudney Plaza, and put those funds into innovative programming and delivery of the arts throughout our community. And so we are very much stepping up with these specific items that are long-term investments. We're toe-to-toe and shoulder-to-shoulder with our Walnut Creek downtown, with the Chamber of Commerce, in looking for ways that each of these three efforts can support not only our restaurants and retail in the downtown, but the entire community. And we're with you 100% of the way. We're very excited to announce these efforts. I know I've probably gone past my public comment time that I'm allowed, but we're with you and we're ready for that type of action. So thank you for all that you're doing. And we are a resource for you, and looking forward to Walnut Creek together.
So I should have let you know that you actually are representing a group, and there is a little more flexibility up to about 10 minutes. I also would like to offer for all council members or even staff, if there is a follow-up, this is a special occasion, and if there is a follow-up question that you would like to ask the speaker, would you indicate, and we will try and address that. Hopefully your questions are shorter than we do for the staff. Is there anything else you would like to add, Catherine?
Well, thank you, Luella. Each one of these programs, we are looking for how we can really get the performing arts out into our community and continue operations at the center. I think all of these three exciting programs, I think, are significant. They're not just an investment for now, but really paving the way for the future, quite literally with the pavers at the Rudney Plaza that families all throughout our area can invest in. But it is important to have some operations continue at the center for us to make those so successful and to be a major spark of economic activity and partnership for our downtown. And so I know that the council is going to be facing a lot of challenges. We're not here to describe the problem. You know what they are. We want to be part of the solutions with specifics. And I hope that's what we feel we've brought forward today. And I'm happy to answer any questions. But each one of these is an immediate and midterm and long-term investment in our economic vitality.
Thank you, Catherine. And we do have two questions. The first one is from Councilmember Silva.
Catherine, thank you very, very much. Your outline today is truly what makes Walnut Creek a great place because of our partnerships with the nonprofits. It sounds like you're going to be raising money from within the community. Does this mean you want money from council people who might be willing to donate?
Well, absolutely. We will never say no to those offers. And we've been so fortunate, the DRAA and everything at the Lesher Center, not only for its improvement of quality of life, but the, again, economic spark that it is. We've been so fortunate to have such a great history of council support. And I know that I'm sure I don't speak just for you, but perhaps the entire council in a commitment to be part of paving the way for the future. These pavers are, if you think about Disneyland and you have the opening area there, well, there's naming opportunities for families and individuals to make a concrete, quite literally, investment in the Rudney Plaza and the Lesher Center. And those funds will go to programming and innovative delivery of that programming, and a wonderful opportunity for each council member, past and present, to be involved. And I think we have such a generous community. We've already also had corporate partners who've reached out to us and said, we want to be doing some virtual events and otherwise at the center and bring them out to our community right now. How can we do that? we're going to rope them in as well. So why don't we rope you in along with it?
So you can count on my husband and me.
Wonderful.
Because holding on to the Lesher Center and what it brings in terms of an economic anchor is very important to the long-term viability of downtown. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. That is terrific generosity and thank you for always being a strong supporter of the center and its variety of arts performances there. Thank you, for the generous contribution.
Thank you. And Terry Kilgore, will you please ask your question?
Mine is actually more of an apology. I'm so glad that Ms. Baker jumped on the line and talked about all that the DRAA has been actively dreaming up. They have been one of our most active partners as we've thought through how we could better activate and use the arts as a continued attraction to our community. And so the items that she just announced, I wanted to say we are as staff ready and willing to help implement. And I just wanted to make sure you all knew that they have been an active, engaged partner, and we're so glad to have them in Walnut Creek.
Thank you. Wow. Having been a board member, having been a trustee, having gone to, I think, a record number of events at the Lesher Theater, it is very special to me, and you can count on my support as well. And Ralph will come along willingly.
Of course he will. Thank you, Mayor.
Right,
thank you so much. And thank you to the city. The partnership is what makes this work. I mean, we really believe this is a time for our community to step forward as you've encouraged us to do all throughout your tenure, and especially at this time. And these are very specific investments, and they're going to help us continue to thrive and to support our business community. I want to thank again, Walnut Creek Downtown and the Chamber and the city staff and leadership. We're going to keep doing this and looking forward to it. We certainly hope that part of that comes with continued operations, whatever they may look like. At the Lesher Center, we understand it's not going to be a perfect snapshot at all of what we've had leading into this year, but we're going to make it count. So thank you for your support, and we're happy to be put to work in helping our entire community.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Madam Mayor, before Ms. Baker leaves, if I could just quickly
Oh, sorry, Matt. Yes. Catherine, please.
Yep.
As the liaison to the DRAA, I want to thank you, Catherine and Peggy, for your enthusiasm, for your energy, for your commitment. You are a dynamic force, and it's just great to work with that group and to have you behind us in this effort and be part of the solution, as you said. And I just wanted to go on the record too that my wife and I will be supporting wholeheartedly the Paving the Way to the Future campaign.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Francois, for you and your family, and for being a very helpful part of as a liaison with the board. You know, your feedback and the perspectives you've offered leading well up to these times have been very helpful, and grateful for it. And again, we are honored to have the generosity of our council members. It's terrific.
Thank you. All right. Terry, did you have anything more, or would you like to remove your little blue hand? Oh, it went away. All right. City Clerk Martinez, would you please bring forward the next person?
We're bringing in Donato Cabrera.
Thank you. Good morning, Donato. Afternoon. Well, you're probably somewhere special. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Not so far away. Good afternoon, Mayor Askew, and to the City Council. I'm Donato Cabrera. I'm the music director of the California Symphony, and I just want to first of all congratulate the staff in this fantastic way forward. As we all know, we're desperately all making plans for the future, and they're changing from day to day. But the fact that you have one, and not one, but many, is just really commendable. So congratulations. And I just wanted to make a brief, and also to Catherine for these exciting announcements for DRAA in their continued support for the arts in Walnut Creek. And I just, first of all, I want to throw my name into the, my hat into the ring for supporting that in any way, shape, or form on a personal level. So so Ralph won't be the only one that will be dragged along. But to also just say that the California Symphony remains a very excited partner in all of this, and that specifically with regard to strategy number 7, that we are here to be a part of the solution and to offer what we can in terms of music performances, and just to be one more helpful brain in the room, or a group of brains in the room, as we bring Walnut Creek back to its wonderful, wonderful place within the Bay Area and from in the country. So thank you.
Thank you, Donato. Is there any way specifically that we need to communicate with the California Symphony?
Well, well, of course, I would encourage Catherine and, of course, you to either reach out directly to me. I know you have my contact information, and of course, to Lisa Dell, our executive director. As all of us are, we're putting together ideas for the future, and specifically with regard to orchestras. We're not only in touch with our peer orchestras in the state of California, but regional orchestras around the country and indeed the world. And so our relationship that we have with the Lesher Center is mirrored around the country, and we can only hope to share what we've learned to date and what we will continue to gather from our colleagues. And happy to be a part of these conversations.
Thank you. Just in case nobody knows, Donato is becoming an internationally recognized maestro and is incredibly creative. And I personally am so proud that he chose to work with our local symphony. Donato, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you for that plug.
You're welcome. All right, Council City Clerk Martinez, would you please call in the next person?
We have Jenny Schneider next.
Yep. Jenny, please start. Are you on mute? Jenny?
Jenny, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yes.
I apologize. I seem to have nothing but trouble with Zoom with you guys. Anyway, thank you for doing this today and all that you've done. I can't imagine the amount of work that's gone into this. There were a few things that I thought of throughout the presentations, and it would be nice in the future if we could ask our questions during each of the sections. But one of the things I wanted to just bring up is my company is a Price Soleil Hands and Boutique, and we're located on Boulevard Circle. And I'm sure you're all familiar with Boulevard Circle, but when talking about the street closures and possibly allowing people to open up, we have a 20-foot clearance on our street if parking is not allowed. There are a lot of commercial businesses over here that people tend to forget about. We also have an alleyway that runs parallel to Boulevard Circle. So it's another way to get in and out of this particular little pocket of Walnut Creek. And at the very end of Boulevard Circle, which is off of Boulevard Way, right near the freeway, there is a private parking lot at the end that's fairly large. And when listening to requirements and what you're trying to do, it could be an ideal space, even for local restaurants who maybe aren't here that have food trucks or those types of businesses in our area. They could be allowed to be brought over here. As far as parking, and transportation to get to the spot, because I think you would have to close off the street in order to use it. Boulevard Way itself has 2 lanes going in each direction, and we also have a bus line. So if there is a way that you could close off one of the lanes or one lane going in each direction, I still think the fire department and stuff could get through, but that would be places where people could park if they needed to and then walk over. I just wanted to mention that because our businesses over here do get forgotten quite a bit, but it is an ideal spot to block off the street from what I was listening to your requirements and allow people to do curbside or pop-ups. On that note, I've done pop-ups many times. My boutique, we do it during the holiday season. And I heard the alarm, so I know I need to go. But the other thing, my question was on how is handicap parking going to be handled if parking spots are taken away and pop-ups are coming. Thank you.
Really appreciate those comments. Thank you. Oh, before you disappear, were there any council questions? No, I don't see so. Okay, thank you. Oh yes, Cindy had a question. Can you come back? Oh, there you are.
I'll just go ahead. Jenny raised some very interesting questions regarding what happens on these small streets in areas that are not actually in downtown or in shopping centers. And I'm sure staff is thinking about those. Yes, Madar? She's nodding. Thank you, Jenny, for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for being patient with me. City Clerk Martinez, would you bring forward the next attendee?
Yes, we have Kathy Hemingway. Kathy.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mayor Haskew and council members. My name is Kathy Hemingway, and I'm the Executive Director of Walnut Creek Downtown's Business Association. And on behalf of the downtown business community, we're very grateful for today's study session to identify strategies for the city's recovery efforts. Over the last 10 weeks, our team has been involved in communication on a daily basis with our members and their businesses to identify their current business and marketing needs, on weekly calls with downtown restaurants, their owners and operators to help share best practices business to business. And we are excited to be able to continue to help facilitate the efforts of the Arts Alliance Task Force with identified artistic activations, including downtown stages that will include 2 virtual performances, hopefully a live performance in August, and then a plein air art program in August as well. We've collaborated with DRAA and the city on creating a Walnut Creek Together as a citywide unifying campaign, and we're going to be looking forward to selling t-shirts to continue the campaign and also offer those to our businesses for an extra revenue opportunity. As Terry has mentioned, we are also developing a city street survey for our members to gather their feedback on the street closures, and hope we'll be able to share that information early next week. And just overall, the downtown's retail, restaurant, service providers, and our office industries have really been greatly impacted by the pandemic. And as we slowly reopen, these businesses really need our support now more than ever. We ask that the Walnut Creek residents support their local businesses, shopping and dining in Walnut Creek. Engage with your local small businesses to find out their story and find out how you can help them recover. And just come to the downtown and look for our events, small or large. But our businesses are really relying on the support from everyone, our association, the community stakeholders, the city, and the Walnut Creek residents to share their insight and ideas today to help revive Walnut Creek, especially its downtown. So we as an organization are very eager to get to work on future committees to help identify solutions that benefit our businesses to make the city, including its downtown, rebound fully as Walnut Creek moves forward together. So thank you for the opportunity to be involved.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Kathy? Kathy, you must have done a fine job, or we know you really well in both cases. Thank you for your words, and we appreciate them.
Thank you.
Our
so
next city clerk, please, the next person.
Yes, we have Rocco coming in next.
Thank you. Rocco, you need to unmute, and I love your avatar.
Okay, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay, just a quick general question, and I don't have a restaurant downtown Walnut Creek, but if you move dining to the street, which I think is a good idea, this sounds like it's going to be a project. I mean, it's challenging, it's time consuming, there's logistics to work out and blah, blah, blah. If you get dining onto the street, what happens when, whether it be in July, August, or September, or whenever, there's a sense of return to normalcy and those merchants want those parking spots back? Is this all just going on for like 6, 8, 10 weeks? I'm just trying to get a timeline going. If I had a restaurant downtown Walnut Creek, now I can go bring everything outside, but am I bringing it all back in August or September? And I'm not trying to put a finite timeline on it. To me, it seems like, where's the end game? Is the dining in the street just for a few weeks, or has anybody kind of thought it through to when a sense of normalcy returns and those merchants who aren't restaurants want their street parking back?
Thank you. Would one of the staff members, Rocco, are you going to stay on the line for?
Yeah, I'm here. I got nothing.
Yeah, we'll ask that after we wrap up all of the other public comment, if that's okay with you.
Okay, just curious. Okay,
and it is a great question, and I'm willing to add to it, which is what happens when summer goes and it gets cold and nasty.
It just seems to me that a lot of logistical moving parts for what might end up just being a few weeks. I mean, we could be in phase 3 by, well, I hate to speculate. I'm just wondering if anybody's looking at, if the outdoor dining in the streets was permanent, well, that's a different conversation. If I was a restaurant, I'd be wondering, well, how long are we doing this for? 6 weeks, 8 weeks? Anyway, I'll let you go. I said my piece. I'm very, very much enjoying this.
Thank you. That's nice to hear.
Okay.
Hey, City Clerk, would you please bring next person in?
Next speaker is Stacy.
Hi, City Council, Mayor Haskew. I just wanted to speak up and just thank the City Council and the city staff for the amazing level of support. I'm the operator of the downtown Walnut Creek Certified Farmers Market. And as an essential business, we have remained open during the crisis. We're very honored to be able to serve the city of Walnut Creek in its time of need with fresh, locally grown produce, and are very appreciative of both the support and the forum that's being presented today. I wanted to offer to join the conversation as a business that's been open and working closely with stakeholders, both at the city and the health departments. We may have some insight that could be helpful as we move into this new phase. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we are very much available and would be happy to share any insight that could be helpful as we continue to move forward together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Stacy? No. Okay. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And let's just address Rocco's question now, please. Terry, would you start with it?
Sure, I'd be happy to begin, Mayor. So the question about, is this temporary? Yes, it's intended to go the length of COVID. You know, I wish I knew, as I'm sure most of our businesses wish they knew, how long this is going to be for. There is the risk that we do this and all the restrictions are lifted and we can go back to normal faster. I think the question remains, once we try it out, if we like it, is they're interested in keeping it this way, maybe for the summer months. Outdoor dining is less popular, obviously, when it gets cold and rainy. But we're looking at this as taking us through fall, honestly, and taking advantage of the good weather. You know, I do want to clarify, this is intentionally not just downtown. It's great that Rocco called in. I actually had him in mind in many of our examples when we were talking about how might some of these strategies work in private plazas. We're going to let the private shopping centers decide what works for their traffic flows or not, but there might be retailers or restaurants that want to spill out into some parking spaces. And our typical regulations about requiring a certain amount of parking don't allow that as flexibly at the moment or for extended periods of time. And so that's one of the reasons we're asking for the flexibility that you'll hear about later, is keeping those private shopping centers top of mind as well. And so I guess I look at this as, if we do all this effort and it turns out they give us the all clear to come out in a couple of weeks, I actually will be thrilled about that. But I don't know that that's entirely likely, given that the county health officials are telling us, just on a call earlier today, they're saying they're going to be gradually releasing restrictions in 2 to 3 week increments. And so I do think we're in some level of social distancing restrictions, at least through the fall. So I think it will be time and energy well spent, is my personal opinion. So I don't know if there was anything material that I missed, but we can certainly answer more.
You're on mute, Mayor.
So I try not to let never mind. Councilmember Silva, please.
Terry, thank you for the answer for Rocco's question, because it was what I was going to ask, but I'll ask you to reiterate it. We are not doing this by stages. We are doing this by how long social distancing will be required. Is that? And so we can get all the way through stage 3 and still be required to have 6-foot social distancing?
We certainly could. Some people even think that we could have some level of social distancing when we get to stage 4. I think that's a big unknown at the moment.
And that is all being data driven by the public health departments in terms of what they see as outbreaks and what happens when they slowly open this up.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Let me just add to that, if I could. I agree with everything that was been stated. Actually, earlier today, I was just reading a letter from Health Director Anna Roth that, just reconfirm we've been hearing, is that the virus does not operate on a timeline, and therefore they can't provide timelines. So yes, it is a big unknown, and I absolutely agree with Terry that if we go through all this and in a few weeks it was found to be unnecessary, well, that'll be the best news we've had in months. So we'll take that problem any day that this might be all for naught. So we don't have any definitive dates for when this, how long this may last. It really depends upon what occurs, how well people comply with the social distancing requirements. If there's another wave in the fall, if there would be a pullback in restrictions, we may do all this and have to go the other way and have to pull it all back out because the virus expands again. So it could go either way. We're hoping for the former, not the latter. But again, it will be data driven as decided upon by the health officer, not any set time frame. That said, as we reviewed in our budget scenarios just Tuesday night, align with what Terry just noted that we've been hearing from the public health officers, is we should anticipate some form of social distancing through at least the summer, if not into the fall. And because dining is a very social and interactive activity, I would anticipate that social distancing requirements if the current virus conditions remain the same, would be in place for several months.
Thank you. I don't believe I officially brought it back to council, and if I did so in error. I understand from the city clerk there is more public comment.
Yes, so we're going to go ahead and bring in Jay Hoyer.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Technology is not my best thing. I appreciate the meeting today. I think it was intended, I hope, to be a brainstorming opportunity. So a lot of interesting, valuable ways to continue to expand the downtown. But I would also emphasize what Terry had said earlier, that's important to look beyond that. Shadelands offers a lot of opportunities from Calicraft and the cult following they have, and the very large opening that is in front of that business, to me would provide an interesting opportunity, or Hess Brewing, or many others throughout Orchards and over in over in Citrus. All those are interesting opportunities, because I would think that as we go to phase 3, etc., that we may not jump to the 20,000 attendees at a big festival like an art and wine festival or something, but to a smaller one. Well, at both Heather Farm and at Orchards, there are small amphitheaters. Perhaps we can do some things that would be of interest there. Also, as you know, I'm president of the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce, and we manage the Shadelands PBID, as well as the CVB, the Convention Visitors Bureau, who's probably been the biggest marketer for Walnut Creek for the last number of years. Want to figure out ways to continue that is a mutually beneficial activity. And everybody's got their powder dry and ready to move. It just seems like everything has been so much on hold that we're looking forward now to the creativity and working together to come up with some ways to get Walnut Creek back in action. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Any questions for Jay? I see none. I appreciate it. And City Clerk, are there any written responses?
We have 2 written comments, so I'll go ahead and read those into the record. The first email is from OG Strogitz of Walnut Creek. Dear Mayor Haskew and council members, thank you for your initiative in holding today's special meeting of the council to establish the ad hoc rebound committee that will guide the determination of specific approaches to optimize pandemic recovery in a safe, rapid fashion. I'm grateful for your leadership. As a member of 350 Contra Costa, I look forward to opportunities in the near future for community-based groups to partner with you in dialogue to explore together how to develop and implement a just green recovery. In that spirit, I invite you to a 1-hour webinar thinking about our post-pandemic world, ensuring a just recovery for Contra Costa County, next Thursday, May 28th from 3 to 4. The webinar is co-sponsored by 350 Contra Costa, the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, and the Contra Costa County Library. We'll focus on the following questions. How can local communities in Contra Costa prepare and support a recovery that accelerates moving toward a healthier, more equitable, and clean energy future? How do we ensure that communities most vulnerable and impacted by COVID-19 participate in and are a key part of recovery? And what can we do as leaders and community members to support transformative solutions to our social, environmental, and economic challenges? The webinar features the following expert panel: Beth Sawin, a biologist; Cynthia Mahoney; Diane Burgess, Supervisor, District 3; Mariana Moore, Director of Ensuring Opportunity to End Poverty in Contra Costa. I welcome your participation and would love to work with your staff to schedule dedicated time with you and our community-based leaders to discuss Walnut Creek's pandemic recovery. I will also forward that email and upload it to our website.
Thank you.
And then the last comment comes in the form of a question, and it's from Glenn Wexler. And the question is, would the city be open to permitting its vacant lot on Locust adjacent to the downtown theater for restaurants that front on Mount Diablo? And that concludes the written comments.
Thank you. Does anybody have a response to that at this moment? Or shall we take that under advisement?
I have a question about that last comment. Can someone clarify whether we still own that property or if it's actually under private control?
I was just going to clarify that actually, Councilmember Silva. Yes, that property was sold to a company about a year ago or so. So it is privately held, and ultimately it'd be their decision whether to allow any of that type of activity on their property.
There. Question answered. Okay. I am now officially bringing it back to council. And are there any more questions about the topic that just occurred? If not, we're moving on to request number 2.
Great. If we could kindly go back to the slides, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, Mayor, is it possible to have a 5-minute break? It's been 2 hours.
A whole kinds of things are possible. Yes. Why don't we take, and I'm going to say, because I think it's going to go on a little longer, why don't we take a full 10-minute break and then be back promptly. And I now know that the clock system is working. So if you're not here in 10 minutes, we're starting without you. Thank you. Welcome back to the special meeting of the Walnut Creek Council agenda, Thursday, May 21st. And I am going to relinquish control to Terry Kilgore again.
Thank you, Mayor. If staff could kindly bring up the slides, I'd appreciate it. So we've covered a lot of ground and we have a little bit more to go. We have talked about the REBOUND program and the related strategies, as well as the budget and staff hour impacts. Next, we'd like to talk about the REBOUND ad hoc committee. And because we have some time constraints, we're gonna ask that we also talk about the resolution really quickly, get all the council questions, and then come back for actions, if that's okay with the mayor.
It is totally okay with the mayor.
Great, thank you. So next slide, please. So as part of this program, what we're proposing is that the council would create an ad hoc committee with the primary purpose of speeding decision-making and providing additional guidance to staff as we try to move swiftly. We recognize that council has connections in the community that we don't, and people will tell you their true story, where sometimes they hold back a little bit when they talk to staff. So we are looking for 2 city council members to sit on the ad hoc committee. We're specifically requesting an ad hoc so that we can be nimble and move quickly without a lot of our traditional process around formal council committees. We would recommend that the ad hoc committee be informed by at least 2 groups of subject matter experts. This can obviously be extended later. That would represent a nice cross-section of businesses and industry sectors from around the city. We put them in 2 groups based on who we think is going to come out of this COVID lull fastest. So we know retail and restaurant are first out of the gate. We expect services and fitness will be next, with the asterisk here that is our best guess. We could be wrong on it, but we also know that those 4 industries have a lot in common. And when it comes to our downtown and our regional shopping centers and even our neighborhood shopping centers, a lot of those services are co-located. We would propose a group B of auto, hotels, medical, and office users. They have slightly different needs, just as equally important, but different needs than group A. And so we would propose bundling a group of sector experts to advise this ad hoc committee. With that, I would move to the next slide, please. And then the next thing that we're seeking guidance on is in your packet for the second agenda item, we are proposing several changes to how we currently do business by means of an emergency proclamation that amends, amending the existing emergency proclamation around the COVID crisis, and that it gives us the tools we need to implement the program and strategies. So some of these are exemptions or tweaks of current code. One of the notable changes is that we're asking to delegate decision-making as much as we can to the city manager or his designee. We have quite a few commissions that traditionally inform us, and we are asking for some flexibility in going straight to decision-making, since most of the changes we're talking about are temporary in nature. And then, as I noted earlier, all of this is intended to be temporary, and that when that happy day comes, that we are out of this crisis, that we would return to our standard policies and procedures, unless there were council direction to do otherwise. So quick examples of things we're asking to change. Next slide, please. We need to actually create official curbside pickup zones. We need some ability to extend our temporary activity permits, which right now end after 5 days. So if we really want to activate the right of way, we need a little more flexibility. We've already talked about signage. In our commercial districts, we need some flexibility on how we implement parking requirements, if we allow takeout, how vacant commercial spaces can be used. And then, as we've talked about ad nauseum, our parking and traffic flow management needs some flexibility. Next slide. So with that, Oh, your slides look a little, there we go. We've just walked through the fact that we need to ultimately accept the rebound program and strategies, approve the budget and staff hours, establish an ad hoc committee, and adopt an amendment to the emergency proclamation. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it to you for questions.
Okay, and I note the Mayor Pro Tem has his hand raised. I'm going to ask, because we have our city attorney available to us, that he will have, there will be somebody who will take responsibility after he leaves, but he has a commitment. So I'm going to actually ask that we focus our questions early on about adopting the amendment to the emergency proclamation. If the council is will cooperate with me and do that, so that Steve can be here and guide us. He has to leave at 3:50, I believe. So that being the case, those people whose hands are raised, are you prepared to focus on the third part of the situation? Would you please shake your head so I can see you all? Yes, yes. Okay, we're going to do that. I will take them in order that I recognize them. Mayor Pro Tem, would you go first?
I'm sorry. I'm fine focusing on the part of the proclamation, and I would support that. I don't have any questions on that.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, all right. So, okay, then that would leave Matt. Do you have any questions about the changes to the emergency proclamation?
Thank you, Mayor. And through the city attorney, Steve, can you opine a little bit? It seems like a lot of changes are included in this emergency resolution, including suspending zoning regulations and granting additional authorities to the city manager. Is that all something that can be accomplished through this document, or will there be follow-up ordinances or resolutions that have to come to the city council to implement that?
So the changes that are presented, so they can be accomplished through this document. They're within the powers of the council through the emergency proclamation. These are changes that really primarily affect the delegation of authority that the council has given before. So previously, you may have delegated certain decision-making to the Planning Commission, the Arts Commission, Design Review Board. And so the council would be temporarily suspending that in very limited circumstances that are identified in the emergency proclamation. So for instance, issues such as parking restrictions, which are presently delegated to the Transportation Commission. Some, probably the closest to pure land use, council member, would be that the emergency declaration does allow for the city manager to approve takeout windows, kiosks, temporary facilities like that. And all of these facilities are specifically temporary in nature. These are not permanent structures. As Terry Kilgore indicated early in her presentation, a permanent approval or approval for a permanent structure would still go through the primary and normal process that the city has. But these are the temporary short-term modifications that would be allowed. The other issue that is relevant to that is the utilization, for instance, of private parking lots, to be able to repurpose them if you were going to use them for outdoor dining or potentially some extension of outdoor retail. Again, that is more of a temporary use that would be allowed. There would not be a permanent change to the land use right. And so these are all items that I'm comfortable are within the council's authority to change the delegation. So we do not anticipate coming back with a zoning code amendment or anything.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's helpful. And I had some more policy related questions in regard to the resolution, but I'll hold on those.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Silva.
I'm confused. I'm confused about what Councilmember Francois just meant. Policy related questions on the resolution. Is the resolution not specific to adopting expanding the scope of authority for the city manager vis-a-vis the emergency resolution.
What I meant was they weren't purely legal questions for Steve. So they were kind of wordsmithing questions or changes to the work text of the resolution for staff, questions for staff related to how it's structured as opposed to pure legal questions.
Well, I'm going to ask all the questions because ultimately the lawyer is going to probably end up having to rewrite them. So on the resolution itself, there is a reference on page 5, very top of the page. So it's section, well, it's part of a section F, where we are moving from the Transportation Commission to the city manager a lot of authority to review and approve parking rates, time limits, hours of operation, and the preferential preferred residential parking program. Why do we need to do that piece of it? How is that going to be ultimately impacted by this COVID-19, et cetera? Somebody got a thought?
So I would, the preferential residential permit program, that Terry, I'm going to defer to you a little bit, but if that can come out, that modification could be made. Because it's not generally aligning with the other strategies that have been identified in the first part of the program.
We might have a couple of residential neighborhoods that are close to some of these commercial areas.
That's actually what I'm thinking, Councilmember.
But ultimately, it's probably important to have a public process for that because these are neighbors making decisions for, these are neighborhoods and they're debating their own use of their own, of the city streets there. So my next question has to do with the hours of operation that this covers, which is on the middle of page 5. For the curbside pickup zone, it says between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. of any day except holidays. And I have to tell you that we have been picking up meals since this started 2 nights a week, and I've never picked it up before 6 p.m. It's always between 6:30 and 8 o'clock. And so I think we are missing kind of the mark for a dinner time. I think that needs to be maybe 8 p.m. And then it says also that for a duration not to exceed 5 minutes. I will assure you that even parking in front of a restaurant, you will end up waiting because sometimes there's someone in front of you and they're ordering and then waiting to pick up. So I think 5 minutes is almost impossible to achieve. And we will be having a tendency maybe to give people tickets for having to wait in line. So perhaps 10 minutes. And Smadar's sign example in the slides actually had a 10-minute sign on. So, and my last question is, I believe this says that this resolution will expire when the emergency order expires. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, it would expire that way. It's really going to expire when the council ends the emergency declaration.
So what if we suspend the emergency declaration because we have achieved, things look normal, and then there's a surge of this disease again, and we suddenly go backward. Is it feasible to actually just make this contingent on us having an emergency ordinance related to this pandemic so that it doesn't have to, it rides with the emergency ordinance if we have to bring it back and doesn't have to go through this process again?
So I understand the question. Thank you for that. I would recommend that we actually, if you were to do that, you would be readopting a second emergency declaration or proclamation.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Point. And as such, you could readopt the whole program at that same time. And so given that this is modifying your some zoning provisions, other things, I would recommend that it stay with the way that it's worded, in the sense that the council would determine when to end the proclamation. But if the council needed to restart the proclamation because we have an unfortunate second wave, then we could just readopt it as it's drafted or as modified by the council.
Same time. All right. So then thank you for the answer. That one I have an answer to, and I hope my colleagues will agree with my other comments.
Let me just add to that, Steve and or Councilmember Silva. I think practically speaking, maybe putting this just a little bit differently, if we if we implement, obviously, these provisions that are allowable per this emergency proclamation, and the county health order were to come out that no longer allows this type of activity, I would have the authority as the city manager to revoke all of these activities, if you will, and temporary allowances. Furthermore, we really wouldn't have a choice because we would be out of compliance with the county health order. That said, if this proclamation were to remain in effect, as soon as the health order allowed for this to once again start, we could then implement it without having to modify the proclamation. So it's really, I think, could be handled either way. If your council wanted to modify the proclamation as health orders change, you have that option. If you wanted to leave it in place, I think it allows us the flexibility to handle it at staff level to do whatever is necessary to comply with the most recent health order.
I was really asking the question of what if we have an all clear and then it results in fearless behavior of the consumer that results basically in a resurgence of the disease.
I have one question, and that is, can we keep a separate log of all of the changes that are made as a result of this decision so that we know what we need to go back and think about in terms of what actually turned out to be a really good decision and should be kept in place versus it's temporary and it just doesn't apply in the what I hope is the natural world again.
Yes, Mayor, we can certainly do that. And I think it's a good idea. Some, like we talked about before, some things we'll love and we may want to keep, and some things we may be happy to see go. So we will keep track of those decisions. It's a great idea.
Okay. I'm looking at the question box and nobody's raised their hands. I know that Councilmember Francois has some additional ones. Do you want to take your technical ones now while we're on a roll?
I'll throw them into the mix, and there are two of them. One of them relates to the assistant city manager's comment early on, which I agree with, that many hands make light work. One of the concerns I have with the resolution is it seems to pile all the work onto the city manager's office. And we have, one of the advantages it seems to me that we have in the government is that we have kind of diversified, decentralized forms in the city government and throughout, including a great community development department and others. And I'm wondering, basically for staff's reaction, or what was the thought process in maybe not delegating things like signage or takeout windows to the community development department?
Councilmember, if I can respond initially to that.
Of course you can.
Thank you. The proclamation as drafted does specifically authorize the delegations to the city manager or designee. And so staff did anticipate that some of the authority would be exercised by other than the city manager himself. There has to be express written delegation by the city manager of that authority, but that is authority, the proclamation does anticipate that possibility right now.
Thank you, City Attorney. So Dan, you're not planning on doing this all yourself?
I can assure you I will be sharing the opportunity to administer this program with many others.
Wonderful. And then the other one was, there are some bigger picture policy items in the resolution about parking rates and street closures. Was there any thought to having the council subcommittee involved in that process, that making it explicit that the city manager would meet and confer with the subcommittee on those issues?
I can initially answer part of that, Councilmember.
I was hoping you would, yes.
And then I can defer to Dan or Terry to a further one. We did contemplate the possibility of having delegated authority to the ad hoc committee on certain issues. Practically, a lot of the authority has already been delegated out of the council's hands with commissions. But we also thought and were mindful of the fact that an ad hoc committee is only two representatives of the council. rather than the majority of the council. And so policy making by 2 representatives is an issue to be thought about. We also contemplated the possibility of appeals of a city manager determination, but ultimately thought that the preferred way would be to delegate to the city managers. So as a conceptual level, and Dan can speak to this definitely, obviously the ad hoc committee will be consulted with on a regular basis, but just in terms of the decision-making authority, we thought better to have that vested in one individual or one position, if you will. I defer to Dan and Terry to the rest of it.
Yeah, I would agree with everything Steve stated in terms of what we considered. I think practically speaking, obviously I'll be working closely with the ad hoc committee, not only with the 2 appointed council members, but with all the other members to solicit input as we work through this. And hopefully everything could be reasonably resolved at my level. And correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I don't know that there would be anything that would ultimately prevent if there were some really unforeseen policy issue that we somehow missed through all of this. It seems to me we'd have the opportunity to agendize that for the full council if we thought we needed council to weigh in on something more substantive. We're anticipating most of this will be fairly ministerial and straightforward, but there may be some exceptions that we haven't thought about that might warrant a bigger policy discussion. So we always have the option to bring that forward. The idea behind this is that we're moving quickly. I'm anticipating that as soon as we get the green light from the health department, we are going to have dozens and dozens of applications come through, and we will be processing those quickly. And the thought was if we can do that at a staff level, as opposed to convening either the council or the ad hoc committee to review and potentially approve those, that we could move more expeditiously at a staff and more ministerial level.
Just one final one, back to page 5 in the delegation to the city manager on the parking rates and taking that from the Transportation Commission. If we truly think that we're not going to be charging or changing the parking rates until October in the most likely scenario, why wouldn't we follow the normal procedure on that and have it go to the Transportation Commission if that's 5 months from now?
I'll take an initial swing at that, and then I'd look to Carla to weigh in. What we are thinking about is that we may need to bring different zones online with charging sooner than others. We make the majority of our money right in the downtown core. So when we say we're not charging, that's the majority of our money. But there may be reason to start charging out near BART or in some of the other zones to help drive people to manage parking by using rate as a tool. So I'll let Carla weigh in a little more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo what Terry said. The purpose of delegating the authority was really to be nimble, just because we don't really know what demand is going to look like. Although we're planning to have free parking through October, it could be that in August, September, we're seeing demand hit an 85% occupancy or higher in certain areas, and we're going to need to control for that. So allowing us to be nimble in this was the intent.
Okay, thank you both. That's helpful.
Yeah, and something I could just clarify if it helps. I have no intention of wanting this authority any longer than necessary, and I will be happy to give it back to the regular entities that oversee these processes as soon as this emergency is over and we are back in a more standard operating environment, if you will. So this really is about being able to move quickly and nimbly as the marketplace responds, as we don't know, how comfortable are people going to be coming out after some of the restrictions are lifted. Will it take a while for parking to fill up, or will we see a mad rush because people are extremely excited to be out in public? And I think, as Carla noted, we may see a different type of response in different parts of the city that would warrant not an across the board type of action, but a case by case consideration for different areas of the city.
Okay. So can we have our slide back, please? Maybe we have our slide back. Thank you. So let's go back to accepting the REBOUND program and the 7 strategies, because it seems to me like that is the key, and then approve budget and staff hours. If anybody has a different opinion, I am completely open to their opinion and will probably agree with it. But that's what I think we should do next. It's not because I'm trying to keep everything a mystery. I think it's most efficient to do it the way we would have done it if we didn't have certain time issues and constraints for the attendees. So I'm looking at heads to nod or not nod. You're okay? I'm seeing heads nod, enough of them to qualify as a majority. So let's, Terry, would you lead us through the REBOUND program and the 7 strategies and how you'd like us to deal with it?
Certainly, Mayor. So if the council is amenable, we can certainly move forward with adopting the program and strategies as is. However, we're open to comments or edits on any of the given strategies.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Good leadership. Are we ready to accept them en masse, or do we want to have additional comments? I'm seeing hands go up. So let's just assume that we have additional comments, and I will open it to Councilmember Silva first, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to say that I am fully supportive of this REBOUND program. In order to have a strong local economy, we need a strong, vibrant city and vice versa. And so we are linked to this. And so I think it's very important that we're doing this, and I'm glad we're doing it. It's unfortunate that the environment requires that we do it. And I would be, we could debate the little nuances and, oh, what would the police services officers do if the meters aren't operating and all of that, but that's the devil in the details. Operational work that needs to get started, and it won't start actually here in a council meeting because it needs to start at the ad hoc level and with staff. So when the time comes, I'm happy to move adoption.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think that looking at these strategies as a framework and an outline, that's exactly the way to go. All the details, I'm assuming, are going to be handled by the ad hoc committee, as well as with staff and the subject matter experts that'll be coming into that. And I'm not sure if you've actually dedicated staff to this already, but in terms of the general framework of how we should move forward, and then look at the different specifics, this is definitely the way to go. And I completely support the fact that we've done this, that we've listened to residents, not just from the meetings that we've had, but from next door and from communications that have happened. And I think we've taken a lot of this, not just under advisement, but now into action, and that we're able to move as quickly as possible while we still have the time before a green light comes, makes the most sense of all. So I'm happy to support this.
Thank you. Does any other council member wish to Matt, would you please go forward?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm generally in concurrence with the prior speakers. I would only add that I think the REBOUND program as well, and I can't think of anything that was missed there in terms of the 7 items, but I just want to put it out there that I think these are the short-term interim fixes. I think there's a second phase to this, which is reinvention or whatever we want to call it. And I want us to get started on that right away after we adopt this. So that's one overall conceptual comment. And then on the resolution, I would still make the case that I think and I have no, qualms with our city manager, and he communicates extremely well and does so with each of us and on a regular basis. Yeah.
Can I defer you on the resolution, please?
Sure. Okay.
Okay. All right, so let's vote on, let's get the motion from Councilmember Silva on the accepting the rebound program and the 7 strategies. And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Silva.
Aye, and I actually did make the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Waddell.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next operation is to approve the budget and the staff hours. Are there any questions, comments about that as well? Councilmember Waddell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In part of the staff report, it specifically said that there's no money associated with this. Of course, we're already, as we learned on Tuesday, we're already having budget problems, and that monies would have to come elsewhere. I think it referenced from a reserves as one possibility. My question is surrounding what happens if our revenue estimates come out ahead? Would that money that we were not expecting be used to offset the use of reserves if the council so chose to use reserves?
Let me.
Excuse me, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry but about the interruption there. Yeah, so just to back this up even further, as you may recall, for the current year estimated $10 million gap, we're estimating, if I recall correctly, to use about $3.5 million of reserves. But that's the final balancer. So in the event that let's start with worst case, and then we'll end on best case or better case. Worst case is that we have a larger than a $10 million hole. We would have to use more reserves to shore that up because we won't know until the fiscal year is over. I mean, obviously, we will be tracking closely along the way, but if we think we're close, but won't fully know until the books close, the reserves would be the balancer. Conversely, if things are better, then we would use less reserves because the other actions would have already been implemented fully, and in the off chance that revenues are better, but we hit our expenditure reduction targets, we would use that additional revenue to offset the use of reserves. So I really view this as part of that same approach. I mean, if we're looking at the 160, we have at least an intent, if not a commitment from Walnut Creek downtown to fund 75,000 of the 160. We're looking at $85,000. I would suggest that if need be, at the end of the year, we would shore up. If everything came exactly in as we had projected for the current fiscal year, and instead of using 3.5 million of reserves, we need to use 3.6 effectively, then we would do that. If revenues came in better and we could absorb this 85,000, then we would do that. So I don't know that we need an actual budget adjustment at this point in time. If your council is comfortable with that approach of using reserves only in the event that they are absolutely needed.
Thank you. Is that sufficient?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Silva.
So let me clarify we're assuming that we are budgeting for this in the current fiscal year, not having to budget for it in the next fiscal year that starts July 1. Oh, Dan, you're on mic. You're on silent.
There's no doubt it could carry over to both, but
that's what we're looking at is initially.
Yeah, initially we're hoping to get started on this in early June.
Oh, actually, how about at 4 o'clock?
Well, I mean, actually implement in early June.
I'd be happy to make the motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I do have a hand from Councilmember Francois, but is that?
I'm lowering my hand and seconding the motion.
Oh, right, very clever. Two things at once. All right, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Waddell.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Now we're up to item number 3, and let's see. So we have not spent any time going for it. Is there any staff input on this at all before we take this on ourselves? No, I'm seeing heads no. So, okay, I'm just going to say we're going to talk about whether we establish a rebound ad hoc committee. Anybody want to make comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
No, I think this is terrific. Allows us to be nimble and meet with people quickly and make immediate recommendations. I think it also allows for the business community to be able to have more of a direct access to working with council members, and that we would then be able to hopefully recommend and adopt procedures in a more expedient manner. Having met with already a business roundtable on this, and a lot of these points that were brought up are now we're looking to even adopt some of these strategies. I would like to be part of the committee. I'm not sure how we would determine who would be on that ad hoc committee, but I certainly am raising my hand to be on that.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think I have a question for the city attorney, and as I understand, what comes with being mayor is the power to make nominations. Oh, no, maybe I should first, let's see. Can I make my nominations for the committee, or should we establish the committee first?
The council can you can make the nominations, Mayor. Now, the formal establishment of the committee is incorporated into the emergency proclamation that the council would act on next.
Okay, thank you. This, as you can tell, because I didn't leap into the opportunity to make my nominations early on, this has been an incredibly difficult decision for me. The talent pool on this council is deep, and every one of us brings a number of assets and expertise that make it that made the choice to think about it even harder. I will tell you that because of the difficulty I had in balancing this all out, I believe that this study session, which I personally have found to be very effective and I think really good for the community, might not have happened. We would have just formed the committee and gone on. So I respect that it was supposed to be hard, and I am going to now take the mystery out of it. I am going to nominate Councilmember Silva and myself to be on the committee. And before anybody goes, I need to explain how I arrived at that conclusion. Cindy and I have worked on very many difficult projects and temporary projects before, and we have a long record of putting together effective results and a good guidance from the council. Both of us have strong business consulting backgrounds, and I have received unsolicited public support for this team. The mayor pro tem, one of the reasons is I am comfortable with this is I'm concerned about the load of the mayorship and taking on this responsibility. But the mayor pro tem that we have this year is an amazing person. He is incredibly valuable as a resource to this committee, to this council. And on those circumstances, when I ask him to fill in so that I can stay active in the ad hoc committee, will make this decision that much easier. So therefore, I again say that I nominate Councilmember Silva and me as the members of the team. I expected the mayor pro tem to have some comments, so I acknowledge him now.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate what you say and appreciate the nice words that you have for me as well. I just wanted to say that one of the reasons that I felt that this was something that I'm highly qualified for is I've had experience in the restaurant industry. I've worked in restaurants. I opened the first restaurant delivery service in Southern California. I worked with hundreds of restaurants in a capacity in an earlier job over several years in Walnut Creek and throughout the community, with a technology background, with ideas that are out of the box and new ways of doing things, and as a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce. I really feel that this is something, especially with the fact of potentially being mayor next year if the dominoes fell into place, this would work out well on a consistency basis. Not that you and Councilmember Silva couldn't do the job. I absolutely believe in 100% of my heart that you can. I just feel that in this particular instance, I have the highest qualifications in being able to be on this committee, and I would ask that be taken under consideration.
Okay, Councilmember Waddell.
I just want to chime in for 2 seconds, not only to support my fellow council member Kevin Wilk, or Mayor Pro Tem. I think he'd be a great nominee for that role, and I think he has, as you referenced, has the right background and the right perspective on this in order to support the community, as I'm sure you and Ms. Silva have also. But his specific background, I think, makes him unique on this council to support this effort, as do I, as a small business owner here for an extended period of time, and as someone that has started and supported and grown large-scale multinational organizations. I am also unique on this council from that perspective. And of course, as all of you know here, I bring a slightly different perspective than the council majority in many cases. And I think having someone on the council, someone on this council that, or on the committee, subcommittee, that can bring the different perspectives rather than having two individuals that are in the majority on the more often occasion, I think would a great benefit to ensuring that the best ideas are brought forward, and of course that there's appropriate amount of debate to move forward with.
Okay. Councilmember Francois.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with your comment that this is a very talented group of people, and any of us that would serve on this subcommittee would do a very able job. I will come at it maybe from a little different perspective in that, and I don't want us to lose sight of this, that what we're doing right now is we're fixing the spillway. We still have to rebuild the dam, and all 5 of us are going to be needed to rebuild the dam. So I think we do need to act nimbly, and I'm respectful of your role as mayor and the thought process that you've given this. And so I would second your motion.
Thank you. I think I made a motion. Therefore, I guess we need a roll call vote.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Waddell.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
I'm going to vote no. Again, not that Luella and City can't do this. I'm just voting no for the reasons stated.
And I appreciate it, Kevin. And I'm going to tell you very honestly that I'm absolutely sure that we are going to find ways for everybody on this council to be active. This is too big a job for just 2 people to do. And so what we're doing now is the best we can with what we have and what we know. And going forward, I'm sure we're going to have to redefine it at least 1 or 2 or 3 more times. So hang in there with us, please. Thank you for the vote. And the last thing is to adopt the amendment to the emergency proclamation.
I'd be happy to make the motion unless there's.
Would you please? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, this is the Assistant City Attorney.
I recognize you.
Out. I just wanted to clarify that adoption would be with the revision that Councilmember Silva pointed out regarding the change from 5 minutes to 10 minutes in parking.
I'd also like it from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and then the removal of the phrase preferred residential parking permit program.
correct. We'll make that change, Council.
I had a suggested revision too before Councilmember Waddell makes his motion, or I could take my own motion for an amendment, but I thought I'd put it out there. In section 3 of the resolution, where it authorizes the mayor to create the ad hoc committee, it says it's for the purpose of overseeing the implementation of the REBOUND program, and I think that's correct. I would suggest that we also add the language in from the staff report that says the REBOUND committee is composed of Mayor Haskew and Councilmember Silva and is responsible for the following. 1, provide insight and guidance on various decision points. 2, convey input from the community. 3, oversee the proposed changes to ensure the intent of the council is met. And if it's not clear, the reason for the suggested change is just to make it explicit what the purposes of the committee or the general purposes are.
Do we have a comment from the city attorney?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, let's see if you guys can hear me. Those changes could be incorporated into the resolution as presented by Councilmember Francois.
Thank you. Any objections by anybody in the council?
Would you mind repeating those for the record, Councilmember Francois?
Yeah, so my suggested revisions would be to number 3, the findings of the resolution. Mayor Haskew is authorized to create an ad hoc committee of 2 council members for the, I would strike limited, for the purpose of overseeing the implementation of the REBOUND program and reopening strategies. This REBOUND ad hoc committee would be composed of 2 council members and be responsible for the following. 1, provide insight and guidance on various decision points. 2, convey input from the community. And 3, oversee the proposed changes to ensure the intent of the council is met.
Thank you.
Move to
Okay,
adopt.
I'm sorry, Justin, do you have something to add?
I was just going to make a motion, but I will wait until directed to do so.
I think we're there.
I move to adopt the amendment to the emergency proclamation with the changes made on the Zoom conference by Ms. Silva and Mr. Francois.
Second.
May I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Waddell.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye, sorry.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I believe we have come to the end of our open session. Yes, people are encouraging me to go on. Therefore, we are going to go into our closed session since we had an opportunity for public comment at the beginning of this meeting regarding the closed session. I suggest that we have a 5-minute break because I have to hand type my Zoom code into my computer. Let's give me a 5-minute break to get in, and then I'll reconvene there. Thank you.